So I just did a really silly thing. I was actually coding for the last 1.5 hours and I didn't record. I didn't go live for the last 1.5 hours, and I just realized that when I checked YouTube and I saw that nothing was being recorded. So it's quite a pity, but what can you do, right? I'm so sorry for those of you who are waiting. So, man. So I was coding for the last 1 hour and 50 minutes, and I was working on the enemies. Maybe just let me run you all through. I was just updating the article for the next part, and as well as continuing work on the spawn manager script and all that stuff. So sorry, I'm just a little stunned that I forgot to go live. It's such an amateur mistake, you know. So what I did was, well, just a couple of modifications. I guess if you're following the stream, you're gonna have to wait for the article to come out, because I'm not sure if I'm able to get the all the footage that I have before I went live out. If that's possible, that would be great. Otherwise, I have to wait for the article. So where I was before, when I was streaming and not streaming at the same time, what I was doing was I was looking through the spawn system that we had so far, that we've created. So a couple of months ago, when I set out to do part 19, I was actually planning to work on the enemy spawning system, and then that didn't, like, halfway through, because I decided, you know, we should improve upon some parts of the UI, right? Because I thought that, for example, the level up UI had a couple of bugs, and then the result screen UI was not very responsive. So then we went in there, we fixed a couple of things, we made the inventory slots UI more modular, so which you can find in part 20. The video is coming out, it's coming along very well. So then for the past 1 hour and 50 minutes, when I turned on my streaming app and didn't go live, I was working on the spawn manager script and making things more modular for the enemy spawning system. And I also created a couple of new enemies so that we can test how the wave system advances. And I just went for a break to think about how to accommodate for special circumstances, right? For example, the flower wall and all that stuff. So what we have, maybe let me just see if I can quickly run through what I've just done. I've removed the so we used to have enemy scriptable objects, right? So I've decided to remove the enemy scriptable objects because the data is already stored inside the prefab. So for our enemies, because every enemy, you can just store the stats in the enemy stat script. So there is no need for us to have a separate scriptable object to store the stats. That's one thing. The other thing is that I've also recoded certain parts of the enemy stats. I've added a extra stat here called knockback multiplier. And what this does essentially is that because certain weapons will increase the knockback multiplier of the enemy, for example, garlic increases the knockback multiplier stat of the enemy. So then we need to have stats that track this. And like the player stats, I've added a base stats and actual stats to the enemy stats. The reason for this is so that in the future you can have weapons that add buffs or debuffs to the enemies. I think currently there are already weapons that add buffs or debuffs, right? For example, there's this weapon that stops enemies, right? That freezes them in place. Okay, that's a buff or debuff. So then we have to create a buff or debuff system, and to accommodate for that, you know, like if we have base stats, actual stats, this will allow us to add buffs and debuffs to enemies in the future, because then you have base stats and then the debuffs will actually modify the actual stats of it. So this is quite similar to what we've done to player stats so far. So player stats for now only has base stats, actual stats, and this is only modifiable through passives. So I was just reading through the enemies page of Vampire Survivors to see how the enemy spawning system works. and I got myself some cookies and a drink just to read through this because I'm having a little bit of a coder's block now. I don't know how to move forward with the Spawn Manager. So another thing that I worked on before I went live was that I've made an extra little thing at the enemy script, so then now you're able to control when an enemy is out of the frame, whether you want it to despawn, whether you want it to respawn at the edge of the screen, or whether you want nothing to happen to it. So this gives us a little bit more control over enemies, right? So not all enemies that if you move, currently how things are coded now is if you move the camera outside of, if you move so that the enemy is outside of the camera, it will spawn, it will teleport closer to you just outside of the camera frame. So if you do not want that, then you can set it to despawn or set it to none, in which case it will have to take its own time to catch up to you. And so that's all the changes I've made so far. I still feel a little silly for streaming for 1 hour 50 minutes and not going live with that. That's such a silly thing to do, man. Hi, sure thing. I'll check it out, Darren. Are you a student of mine in school?
I'm afraid he didn't make it.
Are you just calling me professor for kicks? I don't have a PhD, by the way, so, but it's always nice to be called a professor, so thanks. Well, thanks for dropping into the stream, Darren. Hope you enjoy the music.
I'm sorry, honey. I'm afraid he didn't make it. But there's always hope. Come, let's go inside.
I'm working on the enemy spawning system today, and I was streaming for 2 hours and I forgot to turn on the stream. So I was doing some coding previously, talking to the camera without anyone on the other end of the camera. So yeah, hasn't been so great, but otherwise the coding has been great. Just I was wondering why there was nothing in the chat, you know, and then for like 2 hours. So I thought I didn't think much of it until I checked, and then I saw that I didn't go live. So that wasn't very good. So I'm just rereading through the Vampire Survivors, how they spawn enemies, and then from there, you know, I want to include as much of all of these features as possible into the new spawn manager. How much experience enemy grants when killed? Thanks, Gentleman Gaming. It's nice of you to say that. It's just a little silly. It just makes me feel a little silly now, you know. So, just a thing. I'll get over it in a while. Oh, sound and music will be pretty straightforward, so no, it's not gonna be far in the future. I can just briefly talk about how to add sounds and music to anything in your project actually. Sounds is just provided by, so with sounds there are usually two sounds. There's background sound, and then there is also sound effects that happen. Let me just turn down the volume of the music for a moment. So with sounds in Unity, it's pretty straightforward. All you gotta do for background sounds is to add a audio source to your AnyGame object that you want to add sounds to, and then after that, make sure that the sound spatial blend is set to 2D. So there are two kinds of sounds: 2D sound and 3D sound. Right? So 2D sounds are sounds that will play at the same volume regardless of where you are, and 3D sounds are sounds that will play on specific objects. So then you will have the background music be a 2D sound, and then for everything else you will have them as 3D sound. So for example, if you want the player to take damage, what you will do is add an audio source to the player like that, and then you set the spatial blend to 3D. Okay, what happens then is that your camera, notice your camera has audio listen. So then Unity will attenuate the sound based on how far the audio listener is from the audio source. So for example, if my player is, or let's say my enemy is somewhere far away, like say here, and I play a sound on the enemy here, because there is a distance between the camera and the enemy, right? The sound is gonna appear softer, as opposed to if you were to play a sound on the player, because the camera is the closest to the player. So this also gets affected by 3D space. So if you want, for example, the player sound to be louder, you want to move the camera closer to the player. And that's really all there is to sound. And then for the rest of it is just, so let's say if I want to add sounds to the player, right? Once I have audio source, I will have to assign sounds to the player. So what people usually do to assign sounds is they will, so let me just give you a quick example. They will usually declare a couple of fields. So for example, let me just declare a couple of fields here. Header, sound. And then what I'll do is I'll just do public audio clip, maybe dev sound, block sound, and walk sound and all that stuff. Right, something like this. And then what happens later on is that you have all these sounds in, let's say, player stats, right? Let me just divide this in variables. So then what you end up with is on a script that you assign to handle the sound for the character, you will have something like this, the dev sound, walk sound, block sound, and etc. So then you assign sound clips. You can import sound clips into your project. Then you can assign these sound clips to the player, and then in your code, what you want to do is just to do the following, right? You want to just create an audio source variable as well, something like this. And then here we have audio source component, and then audio source dot play one shot. And then so let's say you want to play the dev sound, and you just do something like this. Then this will play you the dev sound. So you only need one audio source to play any sound that you want for every single game object that you have. So every single game object that is capable of producing sounds in your game, you will have to add an audio source. And that's all there is to sounds. So I can recap this and probably do a more formal implementation of sounds into the project. There's gonna be a lot of stuff, but a lot of it is gonna be repetitive stuff. So it's not exactly difficult, it's just a little bit tedious because we have a fair bit of content. But definitely I can do something about it after the Spawn Manager is done. I hope what I've said makes sense. There's more to sound. You can also categorize the sounds into different categories. Like for example, you have background sound and you have sound effects, right? You see in most games you can go to options and you can adjust different categories of sounds. That is a little bit more complicated, but the general concept of adding sounds into your game is quite straightforward. At least to me, I'm sorry if it's actually more complex than I make it sound. Yeah, it does. So sounds, I think sounds are pretty standard features across all game engines, even as far back as Unreal Engine 3, right? Sound was already handled by the engine, so you don't really have to. You just have to categorize the sounds into whether it's a background sound or non-background sound, and the engine usually does the rest of the work for you. So they have formulas that will help you to calculate how soft the sound is supposed to be, like at certain distances from the character. In Unity, the graph is actually here. So in the audio source, right, you can actually control how the sound attenuates over distance. Attenuates means it gets softer over distance. Alright. So then this is how the default, this is how sound works in real life. But if you want to change the way that, for example, the sound gets softer, you can just change the graph somehow. Okay. Just add some keys, or you can move the keys around, and this will change how the sound behaves over distance. Usually you don't have to worry about this, just use a logarithmic roll-off. This is how sounds is supposed to function. And then you have other effects, like for example the Doppler effect. you can actually control that as well. Doppler effect is if you've ever seen a bus like move across you, you will see that as the bus approaches you, the sound gets higher and higher pitch. And as the bus moves away from you, the sound gets lower and lower pitch. So that's Doppler effect. So you can even recreate these things with the audio source in the Unity engine. And that's because you have the audio listener that is there to listen to where the sound is coming from. It's pretty cool, right? I mean, it's not complicated, but it is pretty cool. How, you know, all the different aspects of sound have been implemented into one single component. It's very nice. Okay, how do you add a player trail effect? Okay, this is really simple. I can show this to you. So let me finish my drink. And I will show this to you. Okay, how do you add a trail to your player sprite? You're right, you just add a trail renderer. So the trail renderer is like this, and trail renderer has a couple of settings that you want to play around with, but before we play around with the settings, right? Let's give me a moment. So before we play around with the settings, let's just create a new material for it. I'm gonna delete this material later, so... No, actually we don't have to create a material for it, because Unity has a default material. So just go to materials over here and then click on this button here. And then what you want to do is select the default. You can search for default line, like that. And assign a line material to it. So once you've done that, and you move the character around, you will find that a trail will appear behind your character, like this. If it doesn't appear, you just gotta shift the sorting layer upwards, and now it appears. Alright, so the trail will... So you see, you can create different kinds of trails, right? It's not necessarily just, you can create kind of like, say, a blood trail or something as well. That's possible as well. So then, what this trail does, this line thing does, is that it controls how the trail renders. So if you want to have, for example, your trail appear differently, let's say you want it to be rounder. Okay, sorry, I forgot to change the sorting layer upwards. Okay, so if you cannot see your trail, first thing you want to do is go to sorting layer and see whether it's under anything. Ah, my bad, I forgot to switch screen. So let me just talk about it. Okay, let me just... Okay, how do you add a trail? You just add a trail renderer component to your character. And the next thing you want to do is just set the material of the trail. Unity has a default material called default line that you can use. And then you also want to make sure the sorting layer, make sure that the trail is on the foreground or something. Okay, if it doesn't appear, like for example, if I play the game, I have a trail renderer, I have a material. If it doesn't appear, that means that I have to go to the sorting layer and figure out what layer I gotta put the trail in. Because the trail renderer is kind of like a sprite renderer, but I mean renders a trail, not a sprite. Alright, but otherwise, once you set it to the right layer, you should see a trail appear. So when you set different kinds of materials for your trail, right, you will see that the trail appears differently. So for example, if I set a default particle system material for the trail changes. See that? So you can create your own trail effect as well. So for example, if you want to have, say, a very lasery like trail, right? So you can have a laser texture, right? So I can grab something like this, for example, and I can use this as a trail. So then when you assign different materials to your trails, you'll get different kinds of effects. So you can look at the lightning VFX tutorial that I have if you want to learn more about how to create like special kinds of materials, so you can make animated materials and stuff. Can you do that? Oh sorry, you can't do that, but you can. If you assign different trail materials, you will see your trail will appear differently. Okay, I'm just gonna use the default line over here, and then later perhaps we can explore different kinds of trails. Okay, so even with the default line, which is what I usually use for my trail, you can make a whole bunch of things already. So by default, the trail is just very vanilla, right? But you can do things like this. Do you see there's a width here? You can just add key, and then you can move, for example, the key like that. And then what it does is that you can just test out the trail on the scene actually. See that? So by modifying the width, you will see that you can change the way that the trail renders itself. See that? So if you want a more speedy kind of look, or if you want, say, the trail to be sharp at both ends. For example, I want the trail to be sharp at both ends. I can do something like this. And this gets the trail to be sharp at both ends, but then in the middle is fat. See that? So just by modifying the width, and then the other thing you can modify is the color. So for trails, you can change the color of your trail obviously, but not just the color, you can also change the transparency. So if I change the transparency of the trail, you will get something like this. So maybe I want to modify the width to be like this, right? Okay, and when I move around, what you will see is the trail will change in shape like that. And if you just want to give, say, an illusion or feeling of speed, right, you can just play around with the transparency over here. So let's say I want to make this slightly opaque at the start, but then at the end it's fully transparent. I can do something like this, and I can reduce the time. So for example, time, I can make it, say, 1 second. And then what it does now is that it gives me a different kind of trail. So the trail itself, by how you configure it, you get different kinds of effects, which you have to play around with a little bit to get used to. So now it looks like a cloak, right? You see, by modifying it in certain ways, you get certain kinds of effects, which is pretty cool. And then of course, you can vary the colors at different places as well. So for example, I wanna say I can add a red here, maybe a green here. And then what I'll get is then the trail has different colors. Then it looks like a, see that? It looks like it looks like whatever it looks like, huh? And yeah, so the rest of the settings are not that important, or rather I haven't played around with them enough to tell you what they are. Usually I just play around with color, and then with the material itself. Alright, so if you change the material, let me just grab a quick material to show you how this works. Actually I don't have to compress that since it's just gonna be temporary. Where's the trail? There we go. So let me just add a different texture just to show you how this may look. So I'm just gonna change this to a default texture, and I'm gonna make it grayscale as well so that it becomes transparent like that. Then let me create a material for that. So for trail materials, right, if you want to create your own trail materials, you will want to, let me call it a laser line, okay? And then you want to use particles, standard, let me see, are there any other options? Particle and then standard unlit. Alright, this is usually what you want to use, and for the rendering mode, you will usually use additive. Color mode will be additive as well. Okay, or rendering mode multiplier is okay as well. Okay, but usually I use additive for both. And then you just assign texture right here. And then once you have that, you will see a look of how this looks like, right? And if you think that it's too bright, you can also play around with emission, and then you can reduce the, actually sorry, do I need emission? No. I can just reduce the color here like that to change how it looks. Actually just leave it white, it's fine. Maybe I can just do opaque, sorry, not opaque, fade and additive. Maybe it's not as strong. Okay, anyway, once you get the material up, okay, different materials will give you different trail effects. So if you want, say, a more lasery trail effect, I can just replace the default line material here with laser line, and then perhaps I'll just move the width, adjust the alpha a little bit as well, and then you'll get different trail effects from different materials as well. Yeah, And then if your trail is a little too small, let me just give it a standard color instead of all these different colors here. Just boost alpha. Just one color. Just one red color. So if you want to increase the size of your trail, it's very simple as well. So you may think, oh, my trail is limited by the size of the character or whatever. It's not, because you can increase the width over here. So the width, there is a field over here you can change, and this increases the width of your trail. Yeah, so the more you increase it, the bigger your trail will be. So you can leave very large trail. And again, the trail is determined by your material. So if you put, let's say, blood splatter, then the trail will appear as a blood splatter. And I hope this answers your question. It's pretty okay. I wouldn't say it's simple to use, but you gotta play around with it a little bit. And then again, the main properties that you want to manipulate are width, and then you also have a time, which controls how long the trail is, and then you also have color. So width, time, and color, as well as the material, are the variables that I play around with most often. Other than that is the, let me just maybe move my window over here so you can see. Other than that is the sorting layer over here. If you don't see, the trail is sorting layer that you have to manipulate, and that's really about it for the trail render. You can play around with it. It doesn't take a lot to get familiar with it, and once you get a hang of how this works, it's actually pretty fun to tinker with. And I hope this helps, and I hope this answered your question. Okay, I'm gonna remove the trail and all that stuff, huh? Okay, let me continue coding the spawning system. Hey, welcome, Ronin. Thanks for dropping into the stream. So how can I... Okay, let me just go back and read the enemy thing again. So with more enemies than the minimum amount at present, one of each types of enemies in the wave will not spawn. Enemies normally arrive in waves. One wave every minute. Each wave specifies a minimum amount and a spawn interval for. So that means that our wave will need to have wave duration here, minimum. Let me just add 2 tips to the different variables here. I think this will be helpful. How many enemies spawn per interval, how long this wave cannot exit until minimum spawns are met. If there are less, then wave can see spawning to No spawn. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to keep the settings as close to the Vampire Survivors game as possible, but also I want to add some settings that are not in the game but may be useful for users who are trying to build their own version of Vampire Survivors.
If it means I stop the self-paralysis, oh yeah. I wanna have fun without the analysis, yeah. I wanna be numb if it means I stop. The self-paralysis. I wanna be numb without the analysis.
Get possible spawns, and here we will just do enemy stats. So then what we have done previously is I've added a count plus plus here, and then whenever an enemy is destroyed, I will add a count minus minus here. So the idea is that we have the class here track how many enemies are currently on the scene, and then this allows us to very conveniently retrieve the variable in any other place in our project. So this very easily helps us to track how many enemies are on the screen at the moment, because every enemy on the screen will have an enemy stats component. And then let's go to wave data. In wave data, we will take into account total enemies here, and over here we decide how many enemies to spawn. So the total enemies is less than total enemies plus count is less than less than count equals enemies.
Could you think that I'm alone when you left me to run away? And how could you leave and take my soul when you knew that I can't move on without your love? Your love, your love, you're special. You take advantage of the fact that you are. I used to think that you were sent from the start. Remember the way we used to lay apart and looked up in the dark. How many times do I need to lose you to have you, have you? Do I need to lose you to have you, baby? Lose you to have you, have you? How many
Equals
times lose you to have you,
enemies respond to populate the screen.
lose you to have you, have you? How many times do I need to lose you to have you, have you? Do I need to lose you to have you, baby? Lose you to have you, have you?
So now if this happens, let me just set the spawn interval to say 5 and 10 and we can test this out. Minimum enemies, I'm gonna set this to say 50. So then what this means is that at the start, when this wave starts, at least 15 enemies will be spawned. So here you'll see at the start 15 enemies will spawn. And then after that, enemies will spawn in intervals of 5 to 10 seconds and then there'll be 1 to 2 enemies spawn. So then this is the initial number of enemies that will be there if there are less than 15 enemies on the screen. That's one of the things that's listed here. The other thing is when 300 or more enemies are alive, what we're gonna do is we're gonna implement a cap under the spawn manager to limit the number of enemies that can be spawned. And here, spawn timer, spawn attributes. Hi Cam, good day. You just finished work? I hope your day has been great. I'm having a good time coding. Just the starting of the stream didn't go so well because I forgot to stream the first 2 hours of my coding, so I was wondering why there wasn't anything in the chat, and then I realized that I didn't go live. But otherwise, I think the progress here has been good. Thanks for dropping in. Appreciate it. It's late at your place, right? You're still you're working the night shift tonight or something. Because it should be like 5 or 6 at your place, right? Yeah, mine has been pretty great. So whenever I'm coding, I'm having a great day, you know. So coding is it's fun for me. Spawn attributes. If there are more enemies, for performance.
Last night I thought I was the only one.
So we want to add to our spawn manager an option to control how enemies on the screen. So which is right here. Stop spawning enemies. So we want to add two levels of checks here. So we want to check inside the for loop itself when we exceed a number of enemies. Spawn and same thing. So here do not spawn enemies if we exceed. So this will be a return. So this will enforce our maximum enemy count, and then for the minimum enemy here we are also enforcing that. And then we probably also want to enforce one more thing, which is we have here current wave index, and then we have number of enemies left in the wave as well, right? Current wave spawn. So this allows us to track how many spawns are in the wave at the moment. So every time we spawn an enemy, we also want to current wave spawn count to increase that. Right, how many enemies spawn. I'm also just gonna move wave data under here actually. Great. And I'll move reference camera down here as well. So then what's on top is just be current wave index and current wave spawn count, which is just there for display, and then we have to set the attributes at the bottom. So what we have here will be, we add the current wave spawn count, and perhaps we add a function here as well. Say public boolean and do we meet the conditions to be able to continue? Since there are a couple of conditions we have to check, right? It might be better for us to put all of this stuff here. If current wave is greater than data wave index maximum spawn. So then here we can just add if can spawn. If it cannot spawn anymore, then we new. And then if it cannot spawn anymore, we do not meet the conditions. Stop spawning enemies to exceed the limit. Maybe we shouldn't call this minimum enemies. Maybe it's more appropriate to call this starting count. So let's make the default value here for wave data should be 1. What this means is that by default you will just exit when the wave duration is met. So let me just reset this. So conditions wave duration is met, and we have to kill all of the enemies that we know. Well, on the spawn manager, we should also add a new function. Which is and the wave and wave data wave index.
Doing this shit for me, got nothing to prove. She said you a star, girl don't gas me, ooh. Show me something that I won't forget. Girl, let me smile so I never forget. Just stand by me, give me a false hope. Yeah. Crash on me, land on me. Where you go, I'll follow. Been having trouble trying to keep up with you, but it's always when I'm way too teed up. Been having trouble speaking whenever I see you. Talking to myself, saying I don't really need you.
Wave
You
duration
ran to a friend saying, oh my god, I would like to show it, but I feel like
okay.
you wouldn't believe it, I'm not sure. Oh my god,
Wait, how long?
friend saying, oh my god, I would like to show it, but I feel like you wouldn't believe it, I'm not sure. She said,
Current wave duration is 0. So we will add delta time spawn timer,
I could fix the pain
and then we will add current wave duration.
And if you're not mine, I can never treat you like a hoe. Yeah, but treat you like a friend, not even close. Doing this shit for me, got nothing to prove. She said you a star, girl don't gas me, ooh. Something that I won't forget.
Wave, the current wave duration is greater than equals to
Stand by me, give me a false hope. Crash on me, land on me. Where you go, I'll
less than data. What is variable we kept? Current wave duration, we'll check the wave duration. So this will be wave data. Okay. This will be current wave condition. Current wave. Wave duration. We allow the wave to exist. duration is not greater than wave duration
We are a blink in this universe, like a grain of dust in the wind. But none of that can limit us.
So then the other condition would be
In our hearts we feel. You could be like dust,
total spawn. Reach total spawn.
guiding us. You might be
The current wave spawn count is less than current wave of spawns. Then false. Reach total spawn is one of the exit conditions. Check the spawn. Not return false. Otherwise, we kill all the threat to make sure there are no more enemies from the current wave must kill all, and enemy stats is less more than 0. Then we have to make sure there are no more enemies first. So then whenever we reach the time to spawn another set of enemies, we check if we are ready to spawn the new, move on to the new wave. There's wave ended. If the wave has ended, we will move on to new wave, right? So then we'll set current wave index. And then current wave spawn count equals to current wave duration. There we go. And cut.
Hopeless, spinning and losing my focus, getting caught up in the moment. How did we get so broken? Yeah, I'm speechless. Gotta hope no one can see this. Telling you all of my secrets. Can't help but think that I need this. I'm spinning in circles. I can't slow down. I'm falling. I'm hurting. It's so damn loud. See, I want you
thing. Go update. Start next wave will be, let's grab all of this. You know what, actually it's fine. Let's just keep everything in update first. Don't wanna make too many changes at the moment. So let's just keep things as they are. So if wave has ended, if current wave index is greater than or equals to is equals to waves data like if current wave index is greater than data length, if we have gone through all the waves, but all waves okay, that. Enable equals to 4. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding a automatic wave advancement. So then let's just test this out by just going through some waves. I'm gonna set the bed wave to be say 60 seconds with a starting count of 10, and then it will spawn another 2 to 3 beds every. Let's just keep the wave at 10. So this will be just wave duration. So at the end of the wave duration, it will go on to the next wave if I kill everything. So I have to kill all the beds for the skeletons to start spawning. And why do we have the spawn function? It's not necessary. And then wave duration must kill all, and then skeleton, let's just put the skeleton on it. Skeleton. Maybe a skeleton and zombies. So zombie goes here. So then after 10 seconds, we will start spawning zombies. Maybe the zombie can be a different wave. Let's do that. So then we can see how the wave advances. So then for the zombie, we will wait until 50 seconds have spawned, until a total of say 20 zombies have spawned, and then we'll move on to the next one. So this will be you don't have to kill all of them. Finally, let's look at the wave data for, let's create a zombie wave as well. So zombie wave 1. So this will be spawns per tick. Let's do 2 or 3. Wave duration is 10. And total spawns. So let's do a starting count of say 25. And total spawns doesn't matter. We just have wave duration. Right, so then we don't have to kill everything. Okay, let's try this out, and then we'll just add all of these spawns to the spawn manager. So let me just add 2 more waves here. We have a skeleton wave and then a zombie wave. So we should start with bats, and then the bat will have a wave number of we'll start with 10, and then after that it will spawn more and more as time passes. Let's just kill all of the. Maybe let me just reduce the experience gem as well. Each gem should give us like 5 experience, right? Not 1,000. 1,000 is way too much. Okay, so it starts with 10 bats, and it just keeps increasing. So then once for the bats, right, the condition to exit is that we need to have all the bats killed. So if you look at the bat wave here, must kill all of them. So until we kill all of them, the wave will not advance. So then we will have to deal with that. Why is the experience? I think because the experience here. Oh, I haven't updated this. This should be 1 to 2. Check this out. Level up. Haven't set up the experience properly. Five experience to level 2. So level 1 to level 2 is 5 experience. Level 2 to level 3. So 2 to 20 will be 20 experience. Oh, sorry, 10 experience. And then 20 to 40 will be 600. So 21, this will be 21 and 40, this will be 3. 21 and 40. This will be 600, right? And then 2,400. 41 to whatever the value is. This will be 2,400. So the cap here will be 9999. Yeah. And start playing. So now this should be a little bit more consistent. So we gotta kill all the bats for the wave to move on to the next one. Let me just look at the enemy spawner to track the wave. What to current wave spawn count. So after all the bats are killed, you see skeletons will start spawning. Skeletons will spawn quite slowly. So for skeleton wave, we just have to wait for the duration. The wave duration is 60, so we gotta stay here for a minute. Then we can move on. Oh, actually, it's reach total spawns, right? So as long as we have spawned 20 skeletons, it should go right on to the next one. So this will be the current spawn count 20, and then after that zombies will come. And this is how we get different numbers of enemies and such. That's pretty exciting, huh? And then after that, when the spawn manager finishes, then it disables itself. Then there is a message here that says all waves have spawned and shutting down. So what we have so far is great. The next thing we will want to do is to implement kind of like an event system, right? So if you look at enemies here, there are events, wave events. So we wanna map events are tied to a wave, trigger the same second marks every time for that wave, making it possible to anticipate them. Wave events. Random events. Creates a big ring of hearts around player. Wave event that appears in map forest. How often wave events? Yes. I'm sorry, Gentleman Gaming, I don't understand what you're saying. How bad is that? How bad is... Sorry, I don't understand what you're saying, brother. But I'm getting close to getting everything up. So the next thing we want to do is to insert events. So we have a whole bunch of events in the game, right? Then we will just have to get all these events out. And now the question is, do we make the wave data part of the events, or do we create a new scriptable object for events? So then we'll have wave event data, right? Is it going to be difficult to be able... no worries, don't have to be sorry about that. Is it going to be difficult to be able to code? Coding takes quite a fair bit of time. So it's I think the easiest way to learn coding is to work on something that you're interested in. So like, for example, if you're watching my streams, then probably you're interested in creating your own Vampire Survivor series, right? Then why not just follow... you probably already are following the tutorials, right? So as you follow the tutorials, try and modify your game in such a way that you get something unique that is not covered in the tutorials. I think that's the best way to learn, because that was how I learned. I think modifying an existing software or an existing game is the fastest way to learn. And it's a lot easier to mod things now because we have ChatGPT as opposed to, you know, like maybe 10-15 years ago when there was no ChatGPT. If you have errors, you would not be able to get AI to help you to fix it, but now you can. Of course, you still have to figure out a way to communicate these errors to ChatGPT, right? But you know, it's still much easier than before. Perhaps, so I'm thinking about perhaps we can make a short video to show how you can use AI to, you know, fix errors in your code. I think that might be useful, but I've got to find an example of this. So how to use, let me just write. So I'm just writing stuff down to, like, whenever I have ideas for, you know, like what I can do for future videos for the channel. How to use AI to fix your errors. I think that would actually be a great video, you know, but I just have got to think of a problem statement. Okay, so where was that? I hope that answers your question. So I'm deliberating how to implement the wave events. Wave events probably will be a different section of the code. So probably will be wave events. Then this will be, say, wave data. This will, I'll change this later. And then we have there's a formula as well, right, for wave events. So probably we will have, under the spawn manager, also an array of wave events that we can add. That probably is the one that makes most sense. So wave events will have wave event data, right? That's great. So if you, let me think of how. So besides working on your own projects, if you come across, so when I was learning my coding as a student, besides working on schoolwork, I just took up projects wherever they came along. I guess my privilege as well as I was in school, so it was easier for me to meet people who was in the same industry. So it was easy for me to say, so I had a friend who always had people looking for him. People looked for him because they needed websites, and then he came to me because he couldn't code, he could only draw. So that was my opportunity. Otherwise, you can go online and perhaps and find small coding assignments, let's say on Fiverr or something. Because projects, besides working on your own passion projects, if you get paid projects, you know, they are also a way to learn. So wherever you can get projects, I think they're great. And I mean, with ChatGPT being a thing, even though it's a thing, right? Like as a programmer, I don't think we're gonna run out of jobs anytime soon. I guess I'm thinking we probably have another 10, 15 years. Because even if ChatGPT is around, we still need someone to put the projects together. Like you can't get ChatGPT to create a Unity game, for example. It can give you codes to create certain features, but it cannot create the whole game for you. So you still have to have someone to assemble the game together, and that is the same for websites or for server setups or whatever. You still need a guy who's behind, who's putting everything together, and that's what we are gonna be getting paid for now. So how do we implement wave events? We have wave data here. Let's just do a separate scriptable object for wave events for now. And then we'll see how to move things forward later on. So I'm thinking if we can put the wave events under as a subclass of wave data, but might not be such a good idea. Editor, player, enemy, right? Enemy, we have wave data. And then let's also have create new script, and then wave event data as well. So let's look at how wave events are like. Let's look at the possible wave events. And probably I will also want to move the scripts here to a new folder. Let's call this new folder spawn. And then let's just put the spawning scripts in a separate folder. Spawning. And so we have wave event data. This will be a scriptable object. And then we also want to have all the usual. Let me just close the scripts here. Stats, all fine. Let's close all these. Close this. It's not needed. Close, close, close. Oh, there's a lot of scripts we have. Where is wave data? Just close that. Wave data, so let's create a new one called wave event data. But let's leave this empty for now because I haven't thought about what to put in first. So what kind of events can they be? They can be enemy spawning events, and then they can also be what's a gold fever? Killing every enemy. So these are all events, huh? We have flower wall. We have rings of poltergeist. 3 to ring or 4 to... Also you have swarms, and then you also have ring spawns, and then you have swarms. So now you have 2 different configurations. Then
But he was filled with childish frustrations and complexes.
Body was lying on the floor in front of the fireplace.
Once I get it. Places with top of bishop. He was from a block. He was to the top. Places with top of bishop. Place president.
So I'll explain how I'll explain what I'm doing now after I'm complete, because I'm trying to piece everything together at the moment as to the architecture of all of this stuff. Get spawn points. Two, two. So one thing that wave events will have duration. possible spawn. Duration and interval.
Hopeless, spinning and losing my focus, getting caught up in the moment. How did we get so broken? Yeah, I'm speechless. Gotta hope no one can see this. Telling you all of my secrets. Can't help but think that I'm in this. I'm spinning in circles. I can't slow down. I'm falling. I'm hurting. It's so down loud. Say I'm what you need. Please don't turn around and leave. We're high at the moment, so don't look down.
So this will be a way to bend data. This and this should give us a way to bend data like that. Possible spawns, these are all the prefabs that can spawn. Duration, interval. Quantity per interval, probability, etc. What else do we have? Affected by luck.
Standing on a rooftop 6 feet high. It sounds so bittersweet. Not who we used to be. Tell me it's not supposed to hurt when your lipstick stays still on my chin. So damn weak.
Oh yeah, that's the first thing you saw, Jacob. Yeah. Uh, the afternoon, the food coma is getting to me, but I'm still making progress. It happens, right? You know, the funny thing is that now with computers and digital devices, right? Like, I feel my most tired in the afternoon for some reason, especially if I have a heavy lunch, which I didn't, because I don't want to fall asleep on stream. And at night, you know, it's when I'm most awake. It's weird. It's just a weird thing, you know. I don't know if it's the same for you or if it's the same for most of you on this stream. So what I'm doing here, I'm working out how to create a scriptable object for wave events. So we have the spawning system and it works well now. So then, you know, we have different waves and then we can control how the wave ends, and then we can control whether we have to kill everything in the wave before it advances and everything. So the wave system is all there. And right now I'm just working on adding an extra section here for wave events, and then these will be for, you know, special luck based events like the flower wall as an event, and then you have mobs that will fly across the screen, right? So all these are events, and these are events that these are a little harder to code because I'm trying to work out what are the variables that we can put into these wave events. And then once we get it down, I think everything is great. That's nice to hear that YouTube is recommending my streams. I figure my streams probably are a little bit boring, because so if you wanna learn coding, it's probably more effective to look at some of our tutorial videos first. And I mean, they are more condensed. So like honestly, I'm streaming because it's a way to keep me working on this stuff, because I have a couple of things outside I'm working on as well. So if I'm not on stream, then I get a little bit lazier and I'll work a bit slower, you know. So the camera on my face is just there to get me working. If you want to learn coding, you can look at our tutorial series and you can just follow a couple of videos first. This will give you a sense of how coding works, and you know, like what is the kind of work involved in game development. And then if you're further interested, then you can follow. So the streams, usually viewers, they'll come to the stream if they have questions to ask, like if they're working on an existing project. Sometimes they are students who need to get their assignment up. Sometimes it's just hobbyists who are creating their games and they have questions about how to implement extra features. So then usually the stream is a way for viewers to just drop in and to ask their questions. And sometimes, you know, it's general questions like how do I learn web development, for example? Where do I start? Or how do I use this particular component? How do I add sounds into Unity? You know, things like that. So then the talking also helps me to stay awake, you know, because I usually code in the afternoon. And yeah. So what's really bothering me now, right, is that I want to merge the wave event and the wave data classes together, so then we won't have two different types of objects. Then the code will be cleaner and more streamlined as well. But I can't think of a way to merge them at the moment, because they are two totally different things, you know. wait event data, and then I don't think this script is needed anymore. Scripts spawning, wait event configuration. Event walk wave event data. How about that? Then we can just make it abstract. Put this under mob wave event data. Wave event data.
Hey, ¿qué tal te va? Yo no en tu mes quiero escapar. Dime si estás igual, vámonos ya. No volver aquí jamás, encontrar un nuevo lugar pa poder desconectar. Hey, ¿qué tal te va? Yo no en tu mes quiero escapar. Dime si estás igual, vámonos ya. No volver aquí jamás, encontrar un nuevo lugar pa poder desconectar. Pa poder desconectar.
Come on. Yeah. Yeah. Gracias por preguntar, cansado de la monotonía y la universidad, comerte la intimidad, saberte mi libertad. Yo voy solo donde tú quieras llegar. Ey, enséñame el camino, cuéntame todos los secretos que hay. La vida es un ride, es un sinfín sin bajar.
¿Qué tal te va? Yo no tu más quiero escapar.
think I'm gonna call it a day today. Let me just record all the changes I've got to the script. I roughly have an idea of how I want to get the events up, but I will need some time to just digest all the stuff I've written in today. So before I forget, let me just track down all the changes I've made. So I've made changes to the spawn manager and to the wave data, right? So let me just throw all these changes in. So I'm gonna do another stream on Thursday because I'm not able to do a stream next week. And on Thursday stream, my target is to finish the event system. And then we can start rolling out the content for part 21. I'm gonna write an article next week. So the wave data script, the spawn manager script as well. Where is my spawn manager script? Okay, there we go. So for now, I'm just gonna remove the wave events attributes until they're more stabilized. Let me save the draft, and so I'll see you all on Thursday. In the meantime, over the course of tomorrow, probably tomorrow I'll just have a think through and see how best I can implement the mobs. Usually, you know, I just have to sleep on it, you know. The next day I wake up with some answer. So sometimes when we're coding complex structures, coding structures takes time for, at least for me, how it works is that I will think about a problem, then I'll have to just take some time, you know, like think about a problem and then come back to it another day, and the answer will be there for me. So it takes a little bit of time, and usually the first sitting is the hardest. So that's how I figured coding works for me. So thank you everyone for dropping into the stream to say hi, to support, to wish me the best of luck and all of this. Really appreciate it. And yeah, so if you're free on Thursday, I'll see you then. And I'll remember to live the stream on time, and not go on preview mode and just forget to live the stream. Alright, I'll see you.